The comedian Bill Bailey once described the Argos catalogue as a laminated book of dreams. You have to be a certain age to get that reference. Children have been poring over the Argos Christmas catalogue since the early 1970s. And now the founder of a website called Retromash has posted old Argos catalogues from 1973 to 1999. Joel Cox went to meet Michael Hay.
Welcome into my retro room. This is my office room, but as a very kind of 1980s sort of a vibe. So if you start over here, yes, we have video games and consoles from the 80s. So we have Atari,
Discover Atari,
Mega Drives, Amstrad, ZX Spectrum,
Sinclair ZX Spectrum Plus 2,
Game Boy, and a few other handhelds. So all the classic ones from the 80s and 90s. Smaller toys like Transformers, Mask, Star Wars,
Boba Fett, Darth Vader, Chewbacca, and 18 other action figures.
A-Team.
You know the A-Team's here!
There's the classic Slinky, of course.
Everyone knows it's Slinky.
And then lower down here we have a few annuals for Knight Rider and the A-Team. And then next to them we have what everybody's normally interested in, which is the Argos catalogues. Got a bunch of them, got about 16 here I think, from the 70s and the 80s and 90s as well.
Pick up the new free Argos catalogue now.
It's so easy. So how complete is your set?
I think I've got about 16, and altogether up to the end of the 90s there's probably 35 approximately. So I have to get them all, obviously. I'm a collector, I have to get them all eventually, but there's no rush.
This one is from 1973, so is this the first one?
It is the first ever one. But it's got all the stuff that you'd expect from the catalogues that went on into the 80s and 90s, but the pictures just look a bit older and the models have different haircuts as well.
For a whole catalogue of answers, Argos takes care of it.
So why the Argos catalogues? Why has that piqued so many people's interests?
I don't know, I guess it's the Christmas element. Everybody used to look at these magazines right before Christmas and they'd make up a Santa wish list. And they are hard to get hold of. It's just a throwaway item that people would probably just chuck in the bin. And nowadays, if you get your hands on one or look at one on the website, it's just a real kind of trip down memory lane. The main reaction is, oh yeah, I remember that. Lots of happy memories from the past.
Some people consider this kind of nostalgia is a sickness. What do you say to that?
I think nostalgia often gets a bad rap. And if you are kind of actually living in the past, that can be a bit of a negative thing maybe. If you would rather like not be here right now, you're avoiding where you are just now and actually living in the past, that's maybe not healthy. But it gives you a happy memory. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, I think.
Get your free autumn catalogue from Argos now. Argos, you can't put a good book down.
But the thing is with this kind of stuff, it's not like you're looking at pictures of your grandmother or something. These are products. I mean, what would you say to people who think that's slightly unhealthy?
I think the Christmas aspects is important here because the objects in the books obviously have a memory associated with them, with like receiving them from loved ones at Christmas. Always happy memories from the people in your family and the friends round about Christmas as well, I think, which kind of give it that extra human aspect. And I certainly know from my experience that anyone who walks into this room in my office always leaves happier because they go, oh yeah, I remember that, and they just leave with kind of happy memories being re-triggered. It's amazing if there are studies that actually back that up.
Joel Cox talking to Michael Hay, who founded the 1980s nostalgia website Retromash. We asked you what brings back happy memories for you. Lisa Bell texted, she says, I've kept the very last Woolworths Christmas catalogue from 2008 every year throughout my childhood and my children's childhoods. It was always so exciting when the Woolies Christmas catalogue came out. June Bowden emailed about her happy memories. Coronation Scott, the Paul Temple signature tune, the feel of vinyl records, the sound of old typewriters, chocolate ginger, and if I heard it, the sound of a spinning top. I had one as a child. Well, research from the Nostalgia Project at the University of Southampton suggests that looking back to the past is a good thing. Dr. Jacob Jewell is a psychologist on the project, and I asked him how nostalgia might be good for you.
I like to say it gives us psychological vitamins. To explain that, I think it's useful to think about it in terms of actually our physical health before we actually even talk about the psychological health. So for our physical health, we have important needs that we have to fulfill, such as the need for caloric intake, water, oxygen, and the more appropriately we fulfill these needs, the better off our physical health is. And the same is true for our psychological health. We have key needs, psychological needs that we have to fulfill. Some of the important ones are a need for social connectedness, a need for meaning in life, and a need for self-esteem, or to have a positive evaluation of oneself. And so just as we need physical vitamins, we need some psychological vitamins, and nostalgia seems to be able to help fulfill a lot of these main core psychological needs. So it does something positively for us psychologically and helps us maintain our psychological health.
Now, you study nostalgia at the University of Southampton. Why?
Personally, I'm a very nostalgic individual myself, so it helps me learn a little bit about myself, and it helps me to be able to just engage in some nostalgia as I'm working, and to be able to push the field a little bit forward with what I can personally bring to the table. And I think that's probably true for some of my colleagues as well.
And academics generally are more interested in it. Why is that?
Well, I think one of the main academic questions initially that we sought to answer with this research really is nostalgia a good thing or is it a bad thing? As someone had previously mentioned, it might be bad if people are constantly stuck in the past and unable to move forward with their life and unable to enjoy the present. And certainly, actually for hundreds of years, scholars did kind of consider nostalgia to be something that was quite negative and very akin to homesickness. However, probably halfway through the 20th century, really just what the definition of nostalgia was tended to change. So it was less so associated with homesickness and more just associated with sentimental feelings for the past. So under this definition, nostalgia does appear to do things positively for people psychologically.
Can you use it to manipulate people into doing things or buying things, even maybe voting for things that when they were being more, I suppose, coldly rational, really in the moment, they might resist?
I think that the marketing research would say that is definitely the case. I don't think it's a really a covert manipulation tactic. So in the marketing research, it basically shows that if you somehow insert nostalgia into an ad for a brand or for a particular product, the ad tends to be more effective at promoting the brand or promoting the product than if the ad doesn't have nostalgia in it. And so, yeah, it does suggest that nostalgia can be used to manipulate people, if that's the term that you want to use.
Dr. Jacob Jewell, you've been emailing us about your happy memories. This one, Anna Wells, I put together an album of photos for my mum from the garden she'd recently moved from. The photos that brought back mine and her memories weren't so much the beautiful flowers, but the quirky stuff, the ramshackle shed my late dad built that stored his stuff, his old homemade canvas scout canoe, and the door with the hole cut in it from when my then toddler son got locked in the toilet.